supremely awesome, or outrageously cheesy? Who cares? The over-the-top nature of power metal is a turnoff for so many people, but not every power metal band is full of frilly-shirted Ren Fair LARPers hitting painfully high notes while ripping off European composers who left this earth hundreds of years ago. Besides, who really invented power metal anyway? Was it actually Halloween in 1987 with the first installment of the Keeper of the Seven Keys album series? Or is there more to the story than you've been led to believe? Before we sort out who the first real power metal band was, you know the drill. We've got to find out how we arrived at power metal in the first place. And as usual, that means we're going back to the 70s and, you guessed it, the UK. One of the defining elements of power metal is the overwhelming melody, and it's the only place in metal where it's still commonplace to use keyboards and, if you're really cool, a keytar. Here's to you, Sonata Arctica. That whole keyboard thing came from two like-minded, but in the end, wholly different organ rock groups.
Well, we started doing our music in the 80s, and we were very inspired by the metal bands of the hour, like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, and even the bands afterwards, like Metallica. They already played an important role in Blind Guardian. But going back to my sources, I have to say Deep Purple has been the most important band. What stands out in Deep Purple, of course, apart from Ian Gillan being the best vocalist ever, is having John Lord on the one side playing an organ, which sometimes already sounds like a very heavy riffing guitar, and then on the other side having this extraordinary, great performer Richie Blackmore doing another sort of riffing at the same time. And this is a key point for metal and maybe for power metal, because when they did their Let Your Hair Down stuff like Speed King or Fireball, this for sure has a lot of links to the power metal generation. One of my first influences had been Uriah Heep. The funny thing is about Uriah Heep, they were more mainstream than Deep Purple. I always considered Uriah Heep to be more narrative and therefore more an inspiration for Blind Guardian with regard to that. And I also considered them to be more on the enjoyable, positive rock and roll side. Both have been their moments in Germany especially, where they were very successful in the beginning of the 70s.
Then of course came the trailblazing twin guitar attack of Judas Priest and the new wave of British heavy metal development, of which Iron Maiden were the undisputed kings.
Iron Maiden were an institution even when, before Bruce Dickinson was in the band. They had this core sound that had an element of punk mixed with this kind of metal sound and amazing guitars, like really great guitar harmonies. They might have taken from Priest, but they really knew how to apply it at the right moment.
The Maiden and Priest direction of everything, really, that's when I got exposed to that stuff. That was when I knew that when I started my band, that's the direction. The speed, the melody, the cool subject matters. I can't even imagine ever calling Iron Maiden or Judas Priest power metal, but they're the most in line with what we've done through our careers out of anybody.
It's just a band that combined great musicianship with this kind of mythic scope and just has unapologetically raised the metal flag successfully around the world for decades. So nothing but love and respect for the wrath children of Iron Maiden.
Tom Morello just hinted at the next component. Mythic lyrics, dragons rhyming sky with die, knights, castles, Vikings, warfare, fantasy. This is what power metal is about. Maiden and Priest had a sense of grandiosity to their songs and really complemented each other quite well. Maiden took influence from literature, history, and film, while Priest, not averse to some of the evils of the world in their songwriting, also took to simply singing about being a heavy metal band and living life. Something Manowar would latch onto, taking up the call to defend true metal. Now let's not leave out the small man with the big voice, Ronnie James Dio. He conjured this sense of awe and grandeur in both Rainbow and Black Sabbath before launching the Dio Band. Tales of dragons, ancient cities, magic, battle, sage-like wisdom, and all things medieval. There would be no power metal as we know it without Ronnie.
Something I always admired about him is that he always dressed the way he wanted to dress. He wore his hair the way he wanted, and he said whatever he wanted in the songs, even if he's talking about dragons. I mean, I think that everyone should have the freedom to talk about dragons in their songs.
There was a sort of wisdom source in whatever he was singing. And it was, to me, it was beautiful words, almost like flowers. He also was really good in improvising and using phrases quite often, but they always appeared like they had a different meaning. You really understood why he was using these words again.
I have to agree with Hansi. I mean, there was a certain majesty, and it's almost like that early Ronnie stuff. Whether, you know, for me, the first discovery was Rainbow, you know, and then the Black Sabbath, the 2 albums that he did, Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules. If I go back to that period, there was a certain majesty to his lyrics.
Around the same time of power metal's start, Yngwie Malmsteen was making his impact playing neoclassical shred that left a mark on a lot of the 90s European power metal scene. Alright, so who was the first band to give it that push? Let's find out.
Manowar definitely set the pace for what was to come, kind of like thematically and presentation-wise with power metal. And my first foray into Manowar was Louder Than Hell, kind of like when they had fully gone off the cheesy deep end. As you go backwards in their catalog, like the first 4 records I feel like are like the serious, like really influential Manowar. Hail to England is my personal favorite. That record's just killer. They used to be a lot more like cinematic, I think. Like the songs would play out like a kind of like a play or something, you know, like there was a real like grandiose kind of thing to it that I think like inspired a lot of bands. And this Manowar just awesome.
Growing up, I was an incredible fan of Marvel Comics, and I'm a history maniac, and I'm very influenced by Richard Wagner. So all those influences, Wagner, Marvel Comics, Thor, Norse mythology, I had that all in my head, and when I started Manowar, with Joey DiMeo, we all agreed on that. I mean, we thought that was the shit. We did songs like Gates of Valhalla on Into Glory Ride in 1983, and you know, Into Glory Ride is it's a breakthrough record. Amon Amarth, those guys, you know, when Ross the Boss Band played with him, you know, he comes to me and just gives me a big hug. You know, there's a lot of Viking, you know, Brothers of Metal, you know, all these bands that obviously taken everything from Manowar, and it's like we're like the school of all that. It wasn't just every single song was epic, in the epic sense of the many parts and the parts of the song, but we were more of a rock and roll band at the time, but we had the epic part of us on every single album. Halloween and Blind Guardian and bands like that are awesome, but we also had rock and roll parts in Manowar.
The American power metal development wasn't nearly the same as what went on in Europe, which grew into what is commonly regarded as power metal today. Early on, the States had other bands that really bit hard on the new wave of British heavy metal and souped it up. We're talking Griffin, Liege Lord, Jag Panzer, Manila Road, Warlord, even Fate's Warning, who towed that power prog line with immense skill. So what did happen in Europe exactly that necessitated a whole new subgenre tag?
For me, I mean, when I think back, I think of the first Halloween album, or not even the early Halloween albums with Kai Hansen, and then, you know, Keeper of the Seven Keys, the fast riffing, that kind of vocals that some people now say Halloween clone kind of vocals, and Kai Hansen with the Ride the Skies and those songs, the Walls of Jericho album.
The Walls of Jericho, although not 100% exemplary of the now defined power metal genre, was surely innovative. The intensity was sheerly overwhelming. It was hard to argue anyone was truly playing faster, largely because of late Halloween drummer Ingo Schwichtenberg's concussive style that sounded like the sound of 1,000 horses charging into battle. The melodies would quickly be refined and drawn out with greater effect, and the band got a boost from the tremendously powerful set of 19-year-old pipes possessed by singer Michael Kiske.
When that came out, I think it caused a mild revolution in power metal. with the double bass drums. I think that kind of set the pace for everything for the next couple of years.
When we start our career, there was a band called Halloween, which obviously has been important for Blind Guardian. They had a strong impact on us, and there was a fresh feeling to what they were doing. They didn't add a lot of new things, but there was something significantly different than with regard to the British metal bands, for example. And I believe that was a sort of positive, sometimes even childish style which appealed to people. Like they really involved children melodies into their heavy stuff, but did that all on, you know, on speed basically. And therefore I believe it is fair to say they defined a new direction. I suppose that a lot of die-hard power metal fans consider them to be the godfathers, and I would so.
Now there is one thing we've overlooked in all this, and this is where we get to have some real fun. Yes, it's time to address the dress. Those cheesy outfits that turns off so many people before they even hear the music. What's the matter? Who hates fun? Is it you? Let it go.
When talking about power metal directly, yeah, there is a little ingredients called cheesiness. There is no doubt about that with some bands.
I think the cool thing about heavy metal is that we can just do whatever the we want to do, cheesy or not. Some things that I may feel are really serious about or whatever, somebody may look at it and think that it's corny. I think it's all a matter of perception and, you know, your taste.
I agree with John. Whatever we are doing, we do it with a very earnest, honest feeling, and it is always meant serious, you know, no matter what people are doing out of it. There is that moment in other bands which I consider to be hilarious, but I try to avoid, you know, laughing about it or blaming bands to do that, because as long as they are successful and as long as there are people who are into it, that's fine. That's what music is about, you know. You have to entertain people no matter how you get there.
Like I could never imagine dressing up like the guys in Manowar.
The Conan look, the first outfits we had on Battle Hymns, I thought they were it was a pretty classy look. I mean, I basically had Conan's outfit, and the colors, the brown colors, and Manowar wanted to be different from the other bands. We wanted to stand out. Because Judas Priest, great band, Judas Priest, you know, Iron Maiden, the new wave of heavy metal, the British heavy metal, they all had black leather and studs and denim. Okay, now if we wore that, we wouldn't have stood out. So my opinion was we had to go one step crazier, one step wilder would have been, which means animal skins and a barbarian look. You know, that was the only thing left for us, and it made sense. And the Conan movie just really put us over the top. It was at the same time. It was the first record.
The power metal outfits can vary in wildness, you know. A lot of medieval looks, a lot of like puffy kind of pirate shirt, like Seinfeld shirt looks. Then there's like the whole like space warrior, futuristic power metal guys with like kind of like, I've seen some kind of like robotic armor on dudes lately. Or there's like the anime kind of swagger to it too, you know, like a cosplay vibe with some elf ears, and you'd be like an elf ninja power metal guy.
But yeah, we'll be at these festivals and you'll see them around backstage and you'll be like, oh man, what band was that? And we got to figure it out, and we'll figure out what band it is and like go catch their show just based on like we just have to know what this sounds like, the guy dressed like this or whatever. But yeah, there's so many directions you can take it in. You got armor metal, wherever the dudes are wearing like suits of armor on stage. You got a lot of leather, like the Manowar stuff and the cod pieces.
Yeah, I don't know if the cod piece is such a great look, but David Vincent rocked it for a little while around like 91, around Blessed Are the Sick, and his was cool.
Trevor, I love you, dude, but come on. All cod pieces are cool.